They brought me on to write adventure stories and to, one of my first assignments, they sent me to Russia, and I went inside Star City and wrote about the Russian space program and their relationship with the United States at that time. But one of my first assignments was to tell the story of Captain Craig Button. And Craig Button, as some of you might have read my Substack post about Captain Button, but he was 32 years old and was a pilot at Davis Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson, Arizona. And one day, he and his squadron were flying their A-10 planes, and he peeled off from the squadron over Arizona, and he drove 800 miles toward Colorado. And then once he arrived in Colorado, he took this strange circuitous path. He went over Telluride. He went over the Black Canyon of the Gunnison, um, and eventually over the Maroon Bells and Aspen and over toward Vail, and then and toward this mountain that was called the Mount of the Holy Cross. And he had he circled it and circled around it a time or two, and then he slammed his plane into this mountain, and he died, and this plane was wrecked into 100 pieces, and it was a mystery. And so when I first joined George, John F. Kennedy Jr., I was back visiting him, and he called me into his office to talk about this assignment. And it escaped me for a long time why he was so interested in this. And obviously now, he was a pilot and he lost his own life in a plane crash. But long story short, I traveled all over the U.S. trying to figure out what had happened to Captain Button. And eventually, I went to California, Texas, Arizona, New York, talked to all the people in his life. And eventually, a picture began to emerge that he'd grown up in a strict religious, family. You might even call it a cult. And then he became a part of the army or the Air Force, and which had a contrasting um, contrasting values in some ways. And I began to see that his life, he sort of outgrew his life, and he didn't know what to do with it. He didn't know how to make change in a way, and so I think that's what happened to him. And